The following story is deeply disturbing and is for mature audiences only. Because of copyright laws, some of the pictures have been AI generated, and free license videos have been used. Some of the pictures are real pictures of the victim and the accused. Kidnapped in front of her apartment on the 18th of December 1994, raped, disemboweled, and almost decapitated, Alison Botha was left for dead. The men that did this to her were unaware that she survived. Kruger had stabbed her 30 times in the abdomen, but when her leg twitched, Dutoy took the knife and started slitting her throat. Alison recalls, "All I could see was an arm moving above my face, left and right, left and right. His movements were making a sound, a wet sound. It was the sound of my flesh being slashed open. He was cutting my throat with the knife again and again and again." Her throat was slashed 16 times. Alison was born on the 22nd of September 1967 in Port Elizabeth. Since her parents were divorced when she was 10 years old, she lived with her mother and brother until she finished school. She traveled for a while, and when she came back, she found a job as an insurance broker. She later moved into her own apartment. Deciding to take advantage of a beautiful sunny day, 27-year-old Alison Botha decided to spend most of the day on the beach with her friends in her hometown of Port Elizabeth, South Africa. As the afternoon faded and it started getting late, Alison invited her friends to hang out at her apartment. They ordered pizzas and played games till late that night, and when everyone started heading home, she realized that one of her friends didn't have transport, and since it wasn't safe to walk the streets at night, Alison offered to take her friend home. Before the night was over, this act of kindness would cost her dearly. In another part of town, a 26-year-old man and a 19-year-old boy were seeking a victim. Kruger, 19, was at a barbecue at Dutoy's, 26, home. They were drinking heavily, and at some point Dutoy had an argument with his wife about finances. Dutoy and Kruger left the barbecue in search for a beautiful girl with a nice car that they could rape and kill. They went to a shebeen where they drank 2.5 liters of sherry, and not having any success in finding a girl, they headed to Club Tonight. Dutoy left saying he would pick up his friend a little later. Once Alison's friend was safely at home, she headed towards her apartment, arriving around 3 a.m. She was pretty irritated that someone had taken her regular parking spot, so she drove a little further down the road and parked there. Whilst leaning across the front seat to grab her laundry off the passenger seat, she felt warm air fill the car. As she came up and turned to look, she saw a man had opened the driver's side door. She had no time to react. The man pulled a knife and held it to her throat, telling her to move over to the passenger seat and not to make a sound, or he would kill her. She moved over and the man drove off. He introduced himself as Clinton and told her that he didn't want to hurt her, he only wanted to use her car for an hour. Clinton, whose real name was Franz Dutoy, drove to a different suburb of Port Elizabeth where he picked up his friend Teens Kruger. The two males never used their real names. Once Teens was in the car, Franz drove them outside the city to a secluded area. It was then that Alison knew something really bad was about to go down. The two males told her that they were going to have sex with her and asked if she was going to fight them. Absolutely terrified, Alison said no. Both of them had a history of violence against women, but Franz always seemed to evade prosecution because his father worked in the police force. Franz and Teens then took turns violating her. They decided that they were going to kill her. At first they tried suffocating her, but she survived. This is where they became frustrated and pulled the knife on Alison. Kruger stabbed her 30 times in the abdomen, but when her leg twitched, Dutoy took the knife and started slitting her throat. Alison recalls, "All I could see was an arm moving above my face, left and right, left and right. His movements were making a sound, a wet sound. It was the sound of my flesh being slashed open. He was cutting my throat with the knife, again and again and again." Her throat was slashed 16 times. She struggled to understand what was happening to her. "It felt unreal, but it wasn't," she said. "I felt no pain, but it wasn't a dream. It was happening. The man was slashing my throat." Once the two were satisfied, they stood back looking down at her. One of them asked, "Do you think she's alive?" "No one can survive that," the other one said. Satisfied that she was dead, they got into Alison's car and drove home, where they had some more beer and went to sleep. Alison was left for dead, lying on broken glass and sand. Realizing the severity of her injuries, she decided to leave a clue for whomever found her. She wrote the names of her attackers in the dirt, and just below that, she wrote, "I love Mom." As she lay there waiting to die, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she might have a chance to survive. At the angle she was laying, she could see headlights through the bushes in the distance. Maybe if she got to the road, someone can help her. She crawled to her knees, then lifted herself slowly. She felt something slimy coming from her abdomen and realized it was her intestines. Using her hands, she tried to keep her intestines from falling out. As she walked, all she saw was stars. With one of her hands, she reached for her head. It was tilted back, leaving her face toward the sky. She put her hand behind her neck, pulling her head up. It kept falling back since she was nearly decapitated. Alison recalls, "As I struggled forward, my sight faded in and out and I fell down many times. I managed to get up again until I finally reached the road. There she collapsed and lay waiting for death or help. It wasn't long before a Tian Eilerd, a young veterinary student visiting from Johannesburg, saw something in the road. He stopped and cautiously made his way towards the figure. He knelt down beside Alison and, using his veterinary training, he tucked Alison's thyroid back inside her neck. He then called emergency services. Tian later said, "God put me on that road for a reason that night." When the medics arrived, they rushed Alison to hospital. Doctors were stunned at the severity of her injuries and fought to save her life. Alison survived her attack. She also remembered every little detail of her attackers, which led to their arrest. Both Kruger and Du Toit pled guilty to kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. In 1995, they were sentenced to life in prison. However, in 2023, after serving only 28 years, both were granted parole. How is that possible? Today, Alison is happily married and has a family of her own. Her book, I Have Life, tells the story of her ordeal, and the movie Alison was released in 2016. Alison has traveled the world telling her story and helping other survivors to come forward and tell stories of their own.